I'm gonna move
Looks
everybody's
good.
faces to one place.
Yep.
So tonight I'm going to talk about keeping time outdoors. So when you're outdoors, you don't have a lot of nice facilities, easy facilities to try and keep your PC in sync time-wise. So we're going to talk about how does your PC maintain accurate time. We know that certain protocols these days require some pretty precise timing for the PC. Programs and protocols that are required for accurate time, logging, how to keep accurate time when not connected to the internet. So this program is kind of based off of a QST article that was in August of 2022, just last month, keeping time outdoors. So I think most people know that PCs traditionally are not very accurate for their time. The clocks that are in those things give you a rough order of what time it is out there. And there's actually, when you're connected to the internet, you have a really nice protocol out there called Network Time Protocol. And through this protocol, it keeps that clock in your PC correctly calibrated to the right time. So there's a whole mass of servers out there for keeping super accurate time. And these servers there's a whole lineage as far as how these servers are used in the process of keeping proper internet time. In fact, these days that time has become so critical that even on large transactions from banks and stuff like that, they have to calibrate those transactions when you're doing a financial transaction, especially internationally, down to the millisecond. It is so important for keeping track, logging what goes on in the financial world. In fact, even going back to, we know we have fiber optic cables that are laid under the ocean, and newer technology is coming along to get more and more of the latency time out of those fiber optics, those long cables. So time is getting more and more important out there. So virtually every PC operating system has some kind of a service that will synchronize its local time. So that operating system knows to some level of accuracy what time it is. Windows is not up. Windows has a really nice time services in there, except it's a little on the sloppy side. Let me get the right page. Sloppy side on how it keeps time. So if you want accurate time, there's a real nice white paper out there that will tell you how to adjust that service to give you really super nice time. And actually on my network here at the house, I have mine kind of optimized, still using standard Windows products, where I can keep less than a half a second worth of accuracy across all my PCs on my network. So when a PC is connected to the internet, generally there is no need for operating systems to be concerned about proper time, because all of that happens in the background. We don't have to diddle with it. It gets done automatically. There are many user applications that can be downloaded to help synchronize. So when the advent of good old FP8 and all of its digital derivatives came about, where we need to have accuracy that's less than a second, there's probably 4 or 5 other applications out there that kind of forces things into really strict timing to make sure those PCs stay very locked on the internet time. So one of the things that we have is that when we take our PC out in the field, a lot of times we take an old relic of a PC or a laptop that's been sitting around for days, weeks, months, for a long time, and it hasn't been fired up and synchronized to the internet. So that clock can be, minutes, hours, days incorrect. Sometimes those clocks are even, there's usually a little battery in there that keeps us with reasonably accurate time, even though the laptop is powered down. And so if you have a really old laptop and that battery has gone kaput, you never know what you're going to get for time when you boot that thing up. But as soon as it gets out on the internet service, the internet time service will end up synchronizing that clock, and we're back in sync. So this whole discussion is really about what happens when you're out in the bush or out at a picnic and you are out on field day and you want to take and run some of these protocols like FT8, FT4, JT65, JT9, JS-Call, and there's a whole bunch of other digital type of protocols that requires you to have reasonably good calibration for time that allows you to encode and decode times on a specific timing for that transmission and reception. So if your PC is off by 2 seconds, it's very unlikely that you're going to end up getting a good decode or a good encoding and transmission of that packet. It's likely to be way out of whack and you won't get any decodes. Now, like on an FT8 screen, when you look at the column there that has the time delta, if your time is more than 2 seconds off, that little time delta will show up as being red. So when you bring up your FT8 application and you see a whole bunch of red in that column, that usually means your PC is way off on time and you need to do something to correct it. So generally you'll need to be less than a second off from real time for all of that encoding and decoding to work correctly. So let's look at a couple examples and talk through them. So for when we do our 7QP up at Walton Lake, up in the Ochoco's, we're a bazillion miles from anywhere, but we're really cool that we have a data link that gets put up that connects to a Verizon cell tower down in Prineville. That data link gives us an internet connection that allows us, all of our PCs on our network, to do normal time synchronization. So that works out just fine for us as long as we have that data connection there. And the other part is that for the 7QP, we really don't do any FT8 and stuff like that. There's a little bit of that going on, but it's not like there's a huge amount. Now for field day, FT8, there is a mode you can put it in that is recognized for field day operations. You can run FT8, and we didn't put nearly enough effort into making that work. Now, this year for our field day operations, we did not have an internet connection. So none of our PCs out there could actually get synchronized properly for a clock for properly doing our FT8. So something that I had thought about it, forgot about it, and never got a chance to come back and rethink about what I was going to do for time synchronization. And at that time, FT8 wasn't one of those protocols that was high on my list that I was thinking a whole lot about. So I ended up forgetting about it. But anyway, there's a lot of other examples for if you don't have internet connectivity, what do you do for time synchronization? So let's get into how we end up doing that. So a couple of ways some of the ways that you can do it is that you can use a good old telephone. So your telephone modems, remember back in those days, you could actually use that. You had a phone number to call and it would synchronize the clock and a little application to run, and it would synchronize your clock on your PC. And also back in those days, 3, 4, 5 minutes, 10 minutes was no big deal. You never really worried about it. There's also stuff out there for like WWV and WWVB. So that's really an atomic clock synchronization process. So there's actually little devices there that'll decode that. The problem is that I think that only gets really done once a day, and normally at nighttime when you synchronize it. So that's not very practical when you're out in the field. Now, another way of doing this, if you have a cell phone and you pay a premium that allows you to turn on a hotspot or do tethering with your cell phone, you can tether your cell phone to your PC, thereby having an internet connection, and your time synchronization on your PC will end up working. So that's a very cool way of doing it, provided you're in an area that has cell phone coverage. For me, when I'm out in the bush, I very, very seldom ever have any kind of cell phone coverage whatsoever. I've been kind of surprised this summer where I never had cell phone coverage before. This is working down the Waldo and Diamond Peak area. I now have an awful lot of cell phone connection throughout both of those wilderness areas that I never had before. So things do change.
I
So
also put the number for the time by phone service in chat. In case you want to call, they'll tell you what time it is at the tone.
okay, cool.
Yeah. I actually posted something like that, Drew, and I said at the tone the time will be, but I forgot what to call. It's been that many years. Mike, could you reiterate the coverage that is at the 7QP normal site one more time for me?
Okay, for at the 7QP, we put up a 30-foot pole. Up on the top of that, I put a what's known as a MiFi, which is basically a data connection, just like what you have in a tablet or even laptops, you can get data services. So that sets up at a 30-foot pole. Ethernet comes in, that gets connected to our 7QP network. And then that is connected to a Wi-Fi connection. And then everybody connects to via a Wi-Fi connection to the network, and thereby that gives you internet connectivity. You can also, with your cell phone, connect to that Wi-Fi connection, and you have data out there that you can take and you can watch your porn movies. Well, actually, I shut that down, but you can watch movies, and I even shut that down too. But you can do all your normal email stuff on the Wi-Fi connection there because I provided data connection there for 7QP.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of get the whole drift of how that goes.
Yep.
So just throwing
That's
a bunch
good.
of hardware at it. Some
That has really increased beyond. We need an 11 element beam to find the nearest tower from the last time.
We have two beams. One's a 13 dB, the other one's 11 dB. One's horizontal, the one's vertical. So the two beams are pointed down the valley there, and we actually get about 2 to 3 bars worth of data there, and it's more than enough to satisfy the whole camp there. It's quite good.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, let's talk about some cheap ways, or a cheap way of getting internet, or not internet connectivity, but some way of providing time synchronization to our PC so we can work these weak signal modes. So a cheap and easy way is using a good old USB GPS unit, GPS receiver. And you can find those things on eBay or any place out there on the internet for about 25 bucks. You can get them as high as 50, 60 bucks. That these have some really high-end receivers and stuff like that. But they're really small, really lightweight, and they really fit the bill. So here's a couple pictures of them. You know, the ones up on the left side, ones up on the right. You can see all they are a little puck. A lot of them have a magnet on the bottom, so you can throw them on the roof of your car while you're driving, or metal top, and they don't end up floating away. Some of them are waterproof, some of them aren't waterproof. So if you do throw it on the roof, you need to, and it's raining outside, you need to check to see what's going on there. There's actually that unit that I have down in the lower right. That's actually an NTP server that's GPS. So it has a little antenna that connects to it for GPS. has a puck on it. You throw it on someplace out there, and then you just plug this into the network, and this acts as a regular NTP, and network time server. It's a little expensive. I think it's $200 or $300 for that little unit there, but then again, you're connected to a GPS system, and I'll get into that right now. So GPS, it's reliable, highly accurate source of time anywhere in the world. So all you need to do is find someplace where you can see the sky, put up a simple little 2-inch puck, and you can get GPS service. Accuracy, I mean, you have all of these satellites that are all connected together. They're transmitting a signal, so you're measuring the time that it takes that signal to get from those satellites that are transmitting synchronously down to your GPS receiver, and you have accuracy of like 3 nanoseconds, or equivalent to 3 billionths of a second of time. Those things are synchronized that close, and that flight of time of that, how long it takes that RF to travel at the speed of light, you're measuring how fast that you're receiving it, and that is good enough to triangulate where you are at on this Earth within approximately 1 meter of space. So that's crazy, just ridiculously accurate clock in time. So that gives you a time reference. So you can repurchase a good old GPS receiver for 25 bucks. Then you throw a little bit of software on your laptop or whatever device you're using. And then that reads the GPS information and provides some data off of the GPS receiver. And then knowing your time zone offset, that allows it to set your computer clock insanely accurately, really, really accurately. So that's kind of the crutches. Get the whole flow of how the data happens. So you have GPS transmitters way up in the air. You have a little GPS receiver that receives the information, and then sends the information through your USB interface to a piece of software. That piece of software takes that data, converts it into information, adds that represents time, adds in the time zone that the PC is set for, and then that sets the clock on your PC, and it's incredibly accurate. Any questions on that flow of how the data works there? Okay, so software. There's a bunch of different software. Some of it's Linux ability, some of it's not. Fair amount of free. You have this product called GPS Time, GPS2 Time. I don't know if they're interrelated, but they look very different from each other. The one that everybody seems to be going after these days is that BKT Time Sync. This is from an Italian that put stuff. I had kind of a hard time downloading it. I have a lot of malware protection on my system, and it just did not like to download it. So I took another device and downloaded it and ran it through a quick virus scan, came out clean, and then installed it on my system here. So that BKT Time Sync is kind of the best one out there that people like. And then there's another one called that you can throw some money at, which is quite deluxe. There's a whole suite of tools the guy has, and that's the NMEA Time 2, and that can cost you 20 bucks, but that is a very, very nice piece of software for that. So here's a picture of the BKT Time Sync. It can handle both GPS time, and it can also handle if you want to connect it to an NTP server. And I'm not sure about how smart it is, but it has a lot of smarts, a lot of really good user settable configuration. So when you install it, you want to look around and evaluate some of these parameters that are set up with it and see if you want it that way or not. I would say that you probably want to set the time at least once an hour. I would suggest maybe 15 seconds or half an hour or something like that. But you want to pick a reasonable amount of time when you want to end up syncing this stuff. So anyway, there's a nice little window there that shows kind of a log on the last 3 or 4 times that it syncs, and it shows how much it's off each time that it syncs. And you can see that it seems like a little bit of a battle here, at least when I first got it going, as far as subtracting a bunch of time, adding a little bit of time, and then finally it settled down to something that's a very, very small amount of time that it was syncing there. Also
Hey,
with
Mike.
it, yeah,
Yeah, I was just curious. I'm really not up on the digital modes, beyond struggling with CW, that is. But is this a critical piece as far as time sync goes for some of the newer modes like FT8 and other ones? Is that where this has become an important aspect?
yes, yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
had the one slide kind of midway where I talked about 5 different modes were all derivatives of digital modes. Like the JT65 was one of the original ones, and then it became more and more pared down. Anytime like you're doing EME type of work, meteor scatter, blah blah stuff like that, the time synchronization is really, really important to get your
Okay.
clock on your PC down to something that's a second or less resolution as far as any kind of error in it.
Cool. Yeah, I did see that slide. I just didn't know the relevancy of the importance. So thank you.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, please ask questions. Oh, the other thing here, I'll point out, it also tells you what grid square you're in, so it can use the coordinates of GPS information that it's receiving here, and then identify the coordinates of your location. So it figures that stuff out and gives you the altitude of where you're at. So anyway, cool piece of software. If you're out doing stuff in the woods, doing weak signal work, that's something that you might want to consider. So here's something to remember. You only want one time service trying to set your local PC clock. So you don't want Windows out there battling with that BK time sync. You don't want 2 guys out there trying to take and set the time at the same time. Now, something to consider here is that when you don't have any internet, Windows Time Sync doesn't have a reference. Thereby, it can't do anything to that PC clock. It won't do anything to the PC clock. So if you don't have any internet service, PC, your Windows time service doesn't do anything. It sits there and does nothing. So that means your GPS time service that whatever application you're using there, it can become the master and it will set your PC clock for you. So you don't need to do anything at all. You don't have any internet access. If for some reason, and I don't know what it is, if for some reason you have both Windows Time Service and GPS applications are both running, they may argue about what the right current time is. And generally what you'll do is that argument is usually less than a second. So it really doesn't matter in the whole scheme of things. Okay, so once you get all of this stuff put together, you need to test it to make sure the damn stuff is working. So you don't want to end up buying one of those USB GPS receivers, and installing it, throw some software on there, get it started, and then head for the bush there and then see if it all works. So you really want to try it out and make sure the darn thing works. So I showed you that one window there. Let me back up to that slide here. So down the lower quarter of that, there's that kind of window there that shows the last time syncs that you went through, and it shows you how much error in that it had to do correction. So if everything's mellowed out and it's all working just fine, then what you want to do is bring up your web browser, and this means that you also have connection to the internet there. You want to end up entering time.is. Time.is will display the difference between the internet time and your local PC time. And that'll give you the kind of confirmation that you know that everything is working correctly.
Funny you should mention that, Mike. I just tried that, and all of a sudden your audio got real choppy, which means I need a bigger processor.
You know, or a bigger processor or a bigger internet, one of the two. But okay, so anyway, that's because that'll end up giving you really accurate time, and that's kind of the go-to thing that everybody ends up using these days. Okay, you might find you might need to add a little bit of offset to your local time. So in that, let me back up to that BK time guide. One of the things that I found is that I could never get accurate time, and I haven't explored it enough. So I had to add in a little fudge factor. So you see in GPS configuration over on the right side, offset. You see where I had to add in a half a second worth of offset. And I don't have an explanation of why that happened. So just be aware that you may end up having to diddle with the thing a little bit to add in a little cheater there to get everything to line up correctly for time. Okay, let's wrap this little guy up and so we can get out of here. Typically, our PC clocks are not very accurate for keeping precise time needed for modern day digital protocols like FTA and all of its derivatives. So we need something to keep our clocks disciplined. And the word discipline means that it's a corrective action. When you get into some really high precision type of methods for oscillators, you talk about making corrections, you talk about disciplining the operator, discipline the oscillator to the correct frequency. So when connected to the internet, our PC is being disciplined by a high precision network time server via the NTP protocol. So that's our internet connection for it. Now, when we don't have internet connectivity and we're working outdoors and we don't have any access to the internet and we need high precision timing on our PC, the easy and inexpensive way of doing that is using a good old USB, a GPS receiver that provides a highly accurate time reference. This, and then you put on an application like BK Time Sync on your PC, configure it, set it up to connect to that GPS unit, and then it will use the GPS data to discipline the PC clock for precise time. So you want to make sure that when you set this thing up, that you also do a little bit of testing on your PC, on your GPS and PC to make sure that it's really accurate.
And then when you test that, Mike, isn't it good to just completely disconnect from any internet connection?
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's going to.
yeah, you'll be confused. Now, well, the
Yeah.
problem is that you got a double-edged sword. There's a whole nother slide I kind of turned off here, but I talked about how to disable time in your PC. And if you give me a moment, I'll turn that slide back on, and at least you know where to look if you want to do it. But you cannot really disconnect from the internet. You have to turn off the time services in your PC, and then you can determine if that's working correctly. So let me get that turned back on. And Let's see if I can find my little slide here. Here we go. So this is a little slide that I had turned off because I was concerned it was going to get confused, but I'll just let you know that there are a set of commands. So if you want to stop Windows Time Services so you can correctly test it, okay, from an elevated page, which means you're at an administrative command prompt, so good old command window there. You just enter net stop W32 time, and that'll give you a list of messages there that says time services has been stopped. So thereby you can go through, do your testing, and when you're all finished with it, you can go back and say net start W32 time. You'll get a list of messages that the service is now started again and you're back using the internet for your time services. So that's one little piece of information I kind of kept out of that thing.
Yep. No,
So-
that's definitely, and that's beyond the settings that most of us operate in.
That is correct, but you can very easily search for that and it tells you what to do. It's very easy to do, even for me. Okay, so that is it for tonight. So back to any questions or anything.
Well, that was really cool, Mike. I'm not used to not having an internet connection, so it's kind of like a wake up call for me. And I'm like, oh, what do I do now? Right? It's becomes so dependent. So this was a really good eye opener for me.
So when you're doing SOTA, POTA, those types, normally you're using CW or phone for making those kinds of connections. But also good old FT8, if you have a small laptop or a small tablet or something with you, or tablet sized laptop, it's really pretty easy to do, and also the right kind of hardware, transceiver. It's pretty easy to do weak signal, 5 watts, FT8 stuff. So when you're up on a mountain, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, or you're out camping or hiking. That's a cool protocol to end up using for a weak signal.
Very cool.
Is there a way to set your time based on any of the beacons?
Those beacons are all time sync. So Whisper is also a protocol that requires time synchronization. I do not know of any way of reversing that. I have not seen any application.
It would be interesting.
Yeah, but you could, yeah. Theoretically, you could, but I haven't seen any applications to do it.
Right.
You should be able to decode WWV.
Yep. You can actually decode WWV, and if you have your finger on setting the time for when you hear that beep, you can actually hit the enter button and get pretty darn close that way.
Well, and I mean, most of the signal every minute on WWV is a digital timekeeping signal that is what your digital clocks or your atomic clocks and stuff actually sync against, is that radio signal.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then also I think there's once a day or something on the WWV band that it actually produces the date, the actual date information that can also be used to set your atomic clock. Any other questions? Okay,
Very cool, Mike. You know, I always learn something. Like, I never thought to think, why would I need to set my time when I didn't have something to rely on? So thank you.
Very,
like
very
You're
important.
the compass in a GPS world.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care, all. Good seeing you, and We'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right, you're gonna make it, Drew?
I believe so. I just got permission from the wife and we're going to be babysitting my granddaughter. So I believe it'll be
Okay.
2.5 of us.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're gonna go that route, Drew. So don't even worry about it. We're gonna make it happen.
I could round it out for the little one and be just 3, you know.
All right, awesome. Hope to see everybody, and you'll see some further communications. Yeah, give me a day or so, and I'll put something together. And
Okay.
thanks to
And I'm
Anthony.
right here. I'm right here
What?
in Albany, about 5 minutes from the Will/Winco. If you want a extra pair of hands to help you shop.
Will/Winco.
And that's actually a good point because I easily spent almost 3 hours in there doing shopping, comparing prices and comparing stuff. So having an extra set of hands for doing running of basic stuff or to spread the hide and seek stuff, that is a good thing to have. It's an extra hand. pair of
Okay.
hands.
Well, just to keep you on the
put it out
paved
there.
aisles.
I will put it out there when I come up with an entire menu, and then you guys can critique it.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks, everybody. And just so you know, I don't know if it went, I know it's a little bit beyond everybody else's, not everybody stayed for this presentation, but I still would like a second grill so that we have the ability to have a failover, or at least, parallelism. So,
Well, like I said,
I think-
I've got my grill, so
okay.
propane.
So between Drew and maybe Ted, you both have portable grills. I don't know if Ted's gonna make it, but yeah, that'll
With
be.
2 of
that'll be
us,
good.
there's a good chance one of them will make it there.
All right, good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And my grill could always go even if I didn't make it, but
I was gonna say I can come by and get it, and just,
Yeah.
so the heck with Drew, we just need his grill.
absolutely. You just love me for my grill.
I do. Truth be told.
Later all.
All right, take care. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mike.
We'll
Take
see you.
care. Bye-bye.